I don't know if you've ever considered how the news gets to you and how it is put together so that we can tell you what's going on in your country and around the world. Key to the entire process is the fact that in our country we have freedom to do it. We have the freedom to send reporters out to get stories and then for them to report it back to you. And that's because of the Constitution that was signed into law on this day 25 years ago. But getting the Constitution there was not that easy. The Constitution, as you know, can be changed. You saw this week how the ANC tried to change the Constitution around the land clause. One of the people involved in the negotiation process, he later became a Minister of Constitutional Affairs in the cabinet of Nelson Mandela, was Valli Moosa, and he joins us now. Valli, good afternoon to you, and thank you for your time. When you look at the Constitution now, in a way, I think we're sort of used to it. We've sort of grown into it, or it's grown up with us. But in fact, parts of it were very different in the 1990s. It was almost radical compared to what we'd had before.
Good afternoon, Stephen Grootjes, and good afternoon to your viewers. I've just been sitting here the past few minutes waiting to come on air and thinking that it is the most amazing thing imaginable for me that 25 years after the adoption of this revolutionary constitution, it is still as solid as a rock. In many, many post-revolutionary situations, constitutions actually don't last. You have the army taking over, you have a coup, you have a reversal back to what you had before that, etc. Here we've got it. There are many things in South African society that's under threat. The one thing that's not under threat is the Constitution. And we know that because recently some people in Parliament tried to change the Constitution. And the Constitution does not make itself easy to be changed. And in fact, there wasn't a huge demand for society that the Constitution should be changed. In fact, it is one of the most popular things that we have in this country. It is more popular and more loved than any political leader or any political party for that matter as such. And I think this is the most amazing thing which we should be really thankful for and not take it for granted. If it's withstood the test of time for 25 years, I'm absolutely certain that it will withstand the test of time for another 25 years. And Stephen, you're quite correct in saying that at the time when we drafted the Constitution, it was unimaginably radical and revolutionary compared to what we had. And it was not just revolutionary in relation to our dark apartheid past. It was also revolutionary in global terms. For example, this Constitution brought to the fore the oppression and exploitation of women. And this wasn't an apartheid thing as such, it was a global phenomenon. And we were really early out of the blocks to argue that men and women must be treated equally in the workplace, must get the same pay, must have equal opportunities in every way, and that special measures must be taken to ensure that women can advance. So the concept of affirmative action for women was one of the first countries in the world to have introduced that, and it has benefited all women, not just black women, but also white women, for example. Today you find women CEOs, women ministers, women bankers, women senior news reporters, etc. This is really an unheard of thing. So the question of equality was a very revolutionary thing at the time, not just between men and women, but also different kinds of people. For example, gay and lesbian people. For the first time it was said, you may not discriminate against against a man who likes another man, for example. That was unlawful in the past. And there were very few other countries who had that. So we had a whole range of such things that came in. Let me give you another example. The question of 11 official languages. When we said South Africa is a country that actually, if you look at it very carefully, there's no dominant ethnic group. There may be big racial groups, but there's no majority ethnic group in terms of a language and cultural group as such. And so we decided, why should English or Afrikaans or Zulu or one of those languages be the main languages? All languages should be equal. So we have 11 official languages. This is This was, at the time, it was unheard of. In fact, the law professors were telling us that we are nuts. There's no such thing. You've got to have one official language. Otherwise, there would be absolute chaos. And what we knew was that there would be more chaos and more disunity if we imposed one language on everybody rather than have that. I'm not going to talk too much because I'm sure you have questions knowing you, Stephen. But just one other very radical thing we put in there was the question of term limits. Now, not everybody has this kind of thing. We said the president of the country is not eligible to serve more than 2 terms in office. In other words, 5 years plus another 5 years, and that's 10 years. And that, when I think about the many things, this is one of the things I think about, that, wow, how did we manage to do that? In today's parliament, you would never get a measure like that accepted because the thinking has narrowed down to the present and the immediate rather than to the future. Take somebody like Jacob Zuma. He would still have been our president had it not been for term limits. Look at many other countries, including countries in our own region, where one person remained as president for 10, 20, 30, even 40 years as such. So had it not been for that, it would have been much more difficult for us to deal with wrongdoers because there will be wrongdoers. That's why we have the Constitution. So I think we should, as South Africans, really, we often lash ourselves because we get so many things wrong. But this is one thing we got right big time.
It's so interesting to hear you talk about that, Valli. I mean, on the one side, so we talk about how radical it was. I don't think, I mean, I was there. I can't recall if you were there. I mean, I was sitting way at the back in a crowd somewhere. But I didn't think that this document being signed in 1996 would mean just a few years later that, for example, gay friends of mine would be married. You know, I don't think people realized that at the time. And the reason I make that point is that there are principles in the Constitution that don't seem obvious to us now, but later, as we go through the courts, the Constitutional Court, etc., become obvious. I mean, I don't know. I mean, maybe you would have known, maybe people like Judge Pius Lange would have known when the Constitution came into law that it would lead, to example, to a ruling in which the science behind nevirapine had to then be listened to, and that government could not be irrational, that government could actually be forced to give people life-saving medication. And there's a link between the signing of that, the nevirapine judgment, and the fact that anyone can go to a government hospital when they have COVID-19 and get medical treatment.
That is, you are absolutely correct. It's all about setting the rules. If you want to play a game of soccer, let's agree to the rules. And then if you find that your players are not in top form on that particular day, you can't change the rules. The rules are the rules, and that's very important. And what that meant was that we've got the rules in the Constitution, and those rules cannot be violated by anybody. Not even if you win the elections and people vote for you to rule the country and to occupy the seats in Parliament. And this is what we refer to as a constitutional state, and where the Constitutional Court does not have more powers than Parliament, because democracy means you choose your own leaders to make the laws that people want them to make. But what the Constitutional Court says, yes, you may do that, but you can't break the rules unless the rules are changed. You can change the rules, but as long as you don't change the rules, you've got to keep to the rules. And that is why, on matters like what you're referring to, one of the big rules is you must act rationally. You don't have the right, if you're the president of the country or if you're the parliament, to behave in an irrational way. And there are circumstances in which the court may say, you say you've taken this decision rationally. Other people are saying it's not rational. Can you show us your thought process? How did you arrive at that decision? And often in administrative law, things have been struck down because cabinet ministers have not acted in a rational way. So I think you're quite right as far as that is concerned. At the time, Stephen, you were a youngster. And for you, a lot of things, you know, young people are almost by nature enlightened. And what people didn't know, that the battles we were fighting at the time was, there was either the constitution we had today or a constitution which limited democracy and which limited rights. And there were many voices arguing that we should have minority protection. And we cannot have a situation where there will be no protection whatsoever for white people in this country. It was unimaginable for many white people that you would go into a situation and you would all go to vote at the same voting station, black and white, and you would be voting for the same things, and whoever wins is in charge. It was unimaginable for people to do that kind of thing. And of course, that was done. And just one other thing, you know, in many countries, the parliament is supreme. Parliament can do whatever it wants to. You know, in the United Kingdom, Parliament can decide on Brexit. They've changed the destiny of many UK citizens by getting out of Europe, but Parliament can take such a decision because they actually don't have a constitution. You know, the people in the House of Commons can do more or less whatever they want to. And we don't have that situation, and just as well that we don't have it, because I have heard, and I want to say again, former President Jacob Zuma say on some occasions, but what's this all about? How come we can't do what we want to? We elected by the people, but we can't do what we want to. The courts stopping us from doing the things that we really think we should be doing. And just as well, because you will get wrong people coming into power, but the damage will always be limited because of our wonderful constitution.
A lot of people listening to you, Valli, I think will be nodding their heads. But they'll also be shaking their heads a little bit because of where we are as a country at the moment. I mean, in the run-up to the local government elections, you would have seen the coverage that we had here of just the complete failure, you know. I mean, people without water, people without electricity, people protesting today in Soweto again about electricity. Some people are going to blame the Constitution for that.
Yeah, some people may well blame the Constitution, but you know, if you take Christianity or Islam, you know, the Bible and the Quran has said that everybody should be good, and we know that a lot of people are not good, and you don't now go and say that those things are bad, it should be revised. I really don't think the Constitution can be blamed at all. Had it not been for the Constitution, I think that possibly we could have had even more problems. So one of the big radical things that we have in the Constitution is what you refer to as second generation rights, which was unheard of elsewhere. And these are rights which says that as a citizen, you have a right to access to clean drinking water. That is the most amazing thing. And it's one of the reasons why all municipalities do not charge residents for the first quantum of water which is used. I think it's the first 25 kiloliters of water is free of charge, and that includes you, Stephen. You don't pay for it. And the reason for that is because of the second generation rights. You have the first generation rights are the ones you were referring to: freedom of expression, freedom of the media, the right to vote, etc., etc. Second generation rights are these sort of socio-economic rights as such. And in some instances, these things have been tested in the courts. But I believe as we go forward, it's going to become more and more difficult for governments simply to in an inexcusable way, fail to deliver the basic services to people, which is healthcare, a roof over your head, water, etc.
Valli Moosa, really good to talk to you on this day. I appreciate the time. Thank you, sir. Valli Moosa, former Minister of Constitutional Affairs in the cabinet of Nelson Mandela.